All right. So, hello. This is Jenna Andreas Ballin Michael, and we're going to go over our presentation in regards to SIDS. All right. So, are we taking the necessary steps to decrease SUID and SIDS in infants? SUID is sudden unexpected infant death syndrome. SIDS is sudden infant death syndrome. Our PICO question is, what are the effects of caregivers focused on safe sleep education compared to caregivers with no structured sleep education? And what changes need to be made to reduce unsafe sleep behaviors within the first year of life for these infants? Looking up on CDC, in 2022, 41% of deaths were regarding to SIDS, so the sudden infant death syndrome. 28% of infant deaths were due to suffocation and strangulation that is done accidentally in the bed. So having extra things in the bed like bumpers, blankets, stuffed animals, things of that sort. And 31% of infant deaths were unknown causes.
So educating caregivers and new parents. So there's different types of way they can get taught. They can go to classes. They can look at videos, or the nurses or the maternal educators can present video presentations, pamphlets. Most likely when they're new parents, they get classes prior to having their baby, and when they're discharged, the nurse also presents them a pamphlet, and then if they have any further questions, they get a social worker to go in there and explain step by step on how to reduce early infant deaths, like placing the baby on their back instead of their belly when they're sleeping. Promoting safe sleep practices and habits. So encourage parents to lay infants down on their back, free of any loose blankets, stuffies, or crib bumpers. Make sure that they are sleeping in their own bed, not sharing a bed with their sibling or their parents, because accidents do happen. Um, Especially for any parents, they're fatigued, they're tired, so they're really not paying attention to what's around them. And then co-rooming with infants is preferred, just not co-sleeping, meaning don't sleep with their siblings, the parents, grandparents. Just make sure there's no stuffed animals beside them, on top of them.
Okay, so regarding the historical perspective, so we have from 1960s to 1970s, a sudden infant's death syndrome emerged as a formally organized medical diagnosis. Little was known about its causes, leading to widespread fear and confusion among families and healthcare providers. In 1980s, increased reporting and research began identifying potential risk factors like prone sleeping or on the stomach, soft bedding, and smoking. 1996, the Back to Sleep campaign launched by the National Institute of Child Health and Human Development, NICSD. This national public health initiative significantly reduced SIDS rates by educating caregivers to place infants on their backs for sleeps. And from 2000 to 2010s, the campaign evolved into Safe to Sleep, incorporating with new findings and emphasizing safe sleep environments like no soft bedding, co-rooming without co-sleeping. And 2022, the American Academy of Pediatrics (AAP) updated their sleep safety guidelines, further strengthening recommendations on room sharing, not bed sharing, breastfeeding, use of pacifier, avoidance of inclined sleeper, swirls after rolling, and commercial monitors. For the review of evidence, all three resources come from trusted expert backed organization, the American Academy of Pediatric and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. They are based on current evidence-based guidelines and reflect the most up-to-date research on preventing sleep-related infants' deaths. The American Academy of Pediatric Guidelines is a high quality clinical practice guidelines developed through expert consensus and systematic review. Same way, the CDC resource adds value by highlighting health disparities and the need for ongoing caregiver support, especially teen mothers. And the last one, healthychildren.org, provides simple parent-focused education that supports nurse-led teaching, making it practical for research education.
And so, we wanted to continue some of our research and, come up with suggestions to increase compliance of, some of these clinical practice guidelines. Some ways that we found that were extremely effective was increasing staff education and training so that nurses and doctors know how to properly teach people in an effective manner, because that really does make a difference. Good teacher does good work, bad teacher does bad work. Standardized patient education. This means that everybody who goes to every different hospital in the area will get the same pamphlet, the same information, so that whenever they go home and talk to their friends, that same information spreads. Basically, it's always that same information and makes it so it constantly is reinforced in people's heads. You could do environmental cues and reminders. That means like posters and signs and random things in places so that it just reminds people, oh yeah, but the Back to Sleep campaign or things like that. You can do parental follow-up. That way, whenever after parents have their kid, you don't just kick them out of the hospital and then never see them again. You call them back, you ask them, and you're like, hey, how are things going? Are there issues? Do you remember this? Do you remember the Back to Sleep campaign? Stuff like that. You could do teach back. That one's huge because it doubly reinforces it in people's minds. You're like, okay, I taught you this. Now, can you explain it back to me in a way that, makes sense? And then finally, audit and feedback. This one's huge. Afterwards, after you initiate all of these campaigns, you initiate all of these ideas, you ask, okay, how are things going? Do you feel like we taught well enough? Do you feel like this campaign is good enough? Do you feel like anything's missing? It just gives you a view of how to evaluate things and stuff like that. And the other thing we wanted to ask the question of is, what is the effects of an evidence-based capstone project? And what is an evidence-based practice, project, capstone project? It's basically just like an implementation framework of how do you want to improve something? You start here, and then these are your steps, and at the very end, you evaluate everything. So what are the effects of all of this? One, it gives you to be able to determine if the changes that you are implementing, whether they are effective or not. So you'll go through the whole process and say, oh, this Back to Sleep campaign has reduced the amount of sudden infant deaths by, X amount, and it'll show you if it's been effective or not. It'll show you the changes that will be needed to be made, because nothing's ever perfect. It gives you a focus. It makes it so that you're like, this is the idea that I want, this is the change that needs to be done, and this is the process that we need to get it done. It's evidence-based. In other words, it's not just a random willy-nilly thing, let's do this. It's let's make a change, this is how we accomplish it, and we will win in the end. It gives you, there's assessment throughout the whole thing. In other words, you are assessing every step of the way. What changes do we need to make? How successful are we? And there's always improvement. This will always result in either at least seeing improvement of it in something, or it will show you where not to go, because it will show you the negatives. You'll be like, oh, we should definitely not go that way. Let's go more towards these positives. It's a beginning to end process. So basically what this means is that the whole thing is built into one. It's not a random thing where you start here and then you hope you know where to go over here. It's step by step. You know where you're going to go, you know where you're going to end up, and at the end, you know what you're going to do there. It helps to measure competency, how people are doing, how people are, if they're successfully implementing the processes, and adherence on whether they are keeping with it. Because there's lots of things that get implemented and then nobody does it. which is not good. And ultimately, it measures if it's successful or not. We want to know if these campaigns are successful. We just don't want to implement it for the fun of it or because we thought it was a good idea, but we want to implement it because we want to see better health outcomes and better things for children in whatever process is being implemented. And then these are our resources.
That concludes our presentation for today. We thank you for listening and bearing with us, and we hope you have a great day.